Here?
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
There she is. Phew.
There she is.
Phew, because on my screen it still says admit, which is all right. All right. So we are this is cuckoo, right? The story that we're in right now, okay, we're in Miketz, and it's we are right in the middle of one of like the storytelling parts of the Torah that is just everything is starting to happen here, right? Everything that we've learned up until this point is leading up to this moment. This is the cuckoo stuff. We are right in the thick of the Joseph story. We are right in the thick of the Joseph story, okay? We're not gonna directly look at the text so much as we're going to kind of look at it. We're going to come out here and talk about a couple of other things. But first, I want to start with a story. From what I understand, it's a Chinese proverb story, right? However, I changed it into like a Jewish story, like the protagonist. His name is Farmer Mazel. Okay, so let me just start with this story. So there's this guy, Farmer Mazel, that wasn't necessarily his name, but that's what everybody called him because they used to say that this guy had a little ebbs and flow of different kind of luck, right? Farmer Mazel. Now, one day, Farmer Mazel, he was going out to plow his fields, and he gets the plow and he hooks it up to his horse. And while he's trying to hook it up to the horse breaks free and takes off into the forest. Oh my God, he's like, oh man, what am I gonna do? And when his friends and family hear about this, they all come and they gather around him. They're like, oh man, Farmer Mazel, what terrible luck you have. And he's like, we'll see, right? We'll see. The very next day, you're not going to believe this. The very next day, the horse comes back with a couple of friends. It's like a couple other wild horses that the horse met out in wherever they were, and they came back, and now they're all hanging out, and they're all just coming back to Farmer Mazel's. And now Farmer Mazel doesn't just have one horse, but he had like 4 horses. And when his friends and family hear about this, they all come in and they gather around him, and they're like, whoa, Farmer Mazel, what amazing luck you have. And Farmer Mazel says, we'll see. Right? The very next day, Farmer Mazel's son, he was very excited about these horses. So he wanted to try and ride one of these new wild horses. So he gets on one of these new wild horses, and sure enough, what happens, right? The wild horse starts jumping and jumping and jumping and throws Farmer Mazel's son off. And Farmer Mazel lands on the ground and breaks his leg, and he's like, oh, my leg. And where, Farmer Mazel gets his son back to the house and everything like that. And then when they hear about his friends and family hear about this, they all come and they gather around him and they're like, man, Farmer Mazel, what terrible luck you have. What does he say? We'll see, right? The very next day, right? The very next day. So, they live in a region where there was like these wars going on, and that this little Jewish village, they had nothing to do with it. But the people, the armies of the area, they were going into all these villages and taking all the young men, right, on the boys and the young men out with them to start go fighting in a war that really has nothing to do with them. So it just so happened that these soldiers came into Farmer Mazel's town, and they knew that Farmer Mazel had a young son. So they go into the village to go and find it, and they're like, where's that son? Where's that son? And when they get to his house, they see that he's laid up with a broken leg. They're like, what use is this guy to us? So they leave Farmer Mazel's son. They just leave. And the armies go somewhere else. And when the family and friends heard about this, what did they do? They came into the village, right? And they were like, wow, Farmer Mazel, what amazing luck you have. And Farmer Mazel said, we'll see. What's that story about? What's that story about?
Stay in today?
Tali, what?
Stay in today, like be present for the moment and like not have expectations?
Well, I don't know, not have expectations. Well, then how do we really, grow? Does that mean you can't have goals and different things to work for and towards and Because if it's just staying today, it's like, well, let's just see what happens today. But, if I have plans, Farmer Muzzle's got plans. He wants to go out and to grow and to do food and all those kind of things. It's like, I like that. Yeah, staying today. Right?
And it's God's will, not ours.
Oh, slow down with this God's will stuff. I like, where we're going. I like this. Susan, go. Jeff's shaking his head. Go, Susan. Oh, are you guys able to hear Susan? I can't hear Susan.
No.
Still nothing, Susan. You want to check your...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Change speaker systems. Just speakers. What you might think might be a disaster or something bad might have a positive outcome if you look at the long run. And even now, first of all, it's perfect for the Joseph story. So congratulations for that. Yeah, it's wonderful. And the other thing is that you think about COVID. Now, it's really getting worse and worse, which is awful. But when we get through this, there might be some silver linings with it as well. So, that might be a stretch, but that story is perfect for the Joseph story.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Susan. What else? Anybody else wanted, before we keep going? What is this story about? What are we talking about here?
I've already heard you tell the story, so I feel like I'm cheating.
No, it's not cheating, because it's a different use of the story.
Okay. Because part of the story is that, he's surrounded by friends and family who come to him when anything is going on in his life, when it's good, when it's bad, when it's, who knows how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
He's surrounded, he's ultimately Farmer Mazel, full of luck, because he has friends and family.
Beautiful. Yes, that's beautiful. It's a wonderful takeaway. And we ain't even going to talk about that today, but I love it. Yes, it's a beautiful takeaway that you never know really what's going to happen. You never really know what's going to happen. But Talia kind of said something else that, that we're going to jump into. You really never know what's going to happen. The only thing that you can really, do to make your way through all of this is to surround yourself with the people who you love and who love you, right? You need to surround yourself with the people who you love and who love you. And we talked about that at Rosh Hashanah and all those kind of things.
I didn't say that.
What?
I didn't say that. Jody said that. I was like, just
no.
being today.
No.
God
You
got
also
this.
said God's will.
Yes.
Okay.
So I never said anything about friends and family.
No. I said that. Jody
I'm
said
just
that.
kidding.
I said that. I was saying that you said God's will, and that's really where we're going to focus on today. Jeff, what do you want to say? Why are you shaking your head at me, dude?
Why are you feeling threatened? I'm just davening here.
I just, I want to give you your space. I want to give you your opportunity.
You do? Well, okay, let's see. I think this devolves into the one discussion that everybody says or asks themselves at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Does God really intervene in our lives in any single moment or in every moment?
Mm-hmm.
If God is an absentee landlord, he created the world and gave it to us to manipulate and use as we see fit.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need to have an overt expression of God in our lives to help us make those decisions when we have the code and the directions outlined for us? Why do we need an overt presence of God?
Great. Okay, so let's talk about the Joseph story.
He's a bad guy,
Well, I don't want to look at it the specifics. I don't want to look at it in the specifics. I want to talk about how we cannot look at our stories in vacuums, right? It's not fair to the text itself if we're going to study a Torah text, to only look at the text, as in its own self, like the beginning of the Parsha and the end of the Parsha as its own thing, because it's all connected. Everything is all connected, right? Because everything that's being set up here, right? Everything that's being set up here ultimately is going to lead to the Pesach story, right? It goes back to well, how did the Israelites get to Egypt in the first place, right? Here we go. We're setting up this story where Joseph gets the coat. Like this is from last week. Joseph gets the coat. He's always teasing his brothers. His brothers throw him in the pit. They ultimately don't want to kill him. So what do? They sell him, and he's like, "No, don't do this. I'm sorry." So they throw him in the pit. They take him out of the pit. They don't kill him. They sell him. And then he's like, "Oh no, why my brothers throw me in the pit?" Then he goes from there. He goes into Potiphar's house. And then things actually are going pretty well for him in Potiphar's house. He's like, "Well, my brother's in the pit, but okay, if this is my life, at least I'm doing really well here. I'm like number 2 in charge, hanging out with this guy Potiphar." And now all of a sudden, his wife comes over and wants,
Yes.
let's call it a play date. Come on over to my house for a play date, right? While Potiphar is there. And he's like, "Nah, I can't do that. With your husband, I'm working." So she makes up these lies. And then what happens? He gets thrown in jail. He's like, "Oh, first I get this, and now I'm over here, and now I'm thrown in jail. Why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me?" Then what happens? Like his interpretation of dreams start to evolve, and he's hanging out with the butler and the baker in jail, and these guys have these dreams, and he's like, "What's going on with these dreams?" And they say, well, Joseph says, "Well, I know how to tell people what their dreams mean." They're like, "All right, let's give it a shot." And then it turns out they're like, I don't tell the kids this, but the baker, what happens to him is that he's told he's going to die. He's going to get executed in a few days. And that's what happens. The butler is like, he's going to get released and go back, and Pharaoh's going to need him for a party. And Joseph's like, just tell him about me. That's all I need you to do. Maybe the Pharaoh's going to need my help for something. So the butler goes back. He's hanging out with Pharaoh, and he forgets to tell Pharaoh. So Joseph's like, "Oh, now look what happened to me. I don't get the." But then Pharaoh has these dreams. What are these dreams? It's the famine dreams. And that's where we are, right? We're up in there right now with these famine dreams. But who's causing the famines? Even earlier, God says, "I'm going to make these famines so these people are going to have to go down to Egypt," right? So it's as if, right? Because what happens now? Then there's the famine. Joseph's dreams start coming true where, earlier on in the story last week where he had these dreams about the wheat bowing down to them and the stars bowing down to him and those being his brothers. And then it turns out it is his brothers because his brothers come down because there's famine. Why is there famine? God created the famine so everybody would come down to Egypt to have to get the food. Joseph's now in charge. He can help out. He sees his brothers and everything like that. And now he's testing them. And I don't want to give stuff away, but I will. Next week, right, what happens is when he, says, "Oh, it's me, Joseph, I'm so sorry." And their brothers are like, "Oh," and Jacob's like, "Oh, what happened?" So there's this reunion, right? There's the reunion, and the brothers are like afraid. And Joseph says, "It's okay, because if you didn't do what you did to me, I wouldn't have been able to be over here. God's will. I'm over here. God's making all these things happen. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." So the question on the table, right? The noodle baking question on the table today is, what is this? Is there really such a thing as, and because this story always makes me think of this, the idea of free will and preordained. Okay, check this out. In Pirkei Avot, right? In Pirkei Avot, in the ethics of our ancestors, in the Mishnah, Pirkei Avot 3:15, 16, around there, 3:16, right, is the classic line. All is foreseen, but free will, not but. Hold on. I want to make sure I get it right. Not but. All is foreseen, yet free will is given. All is foreseen, yet free will is given. Okay, so Jeff, what do you want to say?
If you look at that statement in its specifics, they're incompatible.
Well, depends. It depends. Go on.
Basically, your free will is a concept that we embrace, But if everything is preordained, whether we choose it or not, some way or other, God will manipulate the future to get to the end that he ordains. Whether your choice is X and he wanted you to choose Y, if you act on X, he will get you to Y regardless of what your choice is.
But
and that's the debate.
But that statement says only the big picture is preordained, but everything else in between is the free will.
I don't think you can have the big picture and preordained and not see it in essence in our choices.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. Because now check out this other statement in Ketubot, right?
Wait, Rabbi, I have a question. Did you say preordained or did you say foreseen?
Foreseen.
Which is a difference.
Sorry. Okay. Can you share the difference?
The difference is when you see the future, and preordained is when you control the future. And I think there's a remarkable difference in that. And therefore the two can be compatible, as Jeff's point out, but it's foreseen, not controlled. So I'm going to add something. Rabbi Artson from HAU talked about process theology, where he believes that there is the divine can see an end, but there are different paths that can take you to it or different parts of the end. Along those lines, if I'm summarizing it correctly. As one option for a solution to what seems like a conundrum.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Safta, Pnina, go ahead.
Hey, we need to also look at the background of who are the people that Joseph is with when he's in Egypt.
Okay.
Yes, he wasn't happy with his brothers and he wound up in Egypt, but now he is a prince who married the princess, and he's actually in charge of all the distribution of the foods, and he's got a very big position. So then what happens? He dies, and another pharaoh gets up that didn't know Joseph. In other words, there isn't another person there that Jewish or believe in the God of the Jews who is in charge of anything. So I did a paper about exile in the Bible, and unfortunately, it's a point in history that he was recognized for his ability to manage money and food. And then when he was no longer needed because he's gone, the Pharaoh got up and slaved all the Jews. And they had to run away from there, in fact, to be saved. So when you look at history later on, you have a person like Abarbanel, who was the treasurer for Isabella and Ferdinand, when the execution of the Jews by the Inquisition finally wound up by throwing them out of Spain. Abarbanel stayed in power. I mean, he was still the treasurer till Isabella and Ferdinand, I think, was murdered. And another king got up and Abarbanel had to flee Spain. So we have this situation that we are, unfortunately, if there is somebody who is in power, is not immune because of his belief in the God of the Jews from execution or expulsion.
Nina, but
So
it also
it's just another example that it was a change in history. Joseph, he didn't live in a vacuum, right? He lived in a place where there is other people. With his family too. There was other people in the land, but yet he was singled out because of his abilities. He got to where he was, and then when there was no more necessity of him, we were treated differently. So, and our luck was in the hand of others.
Okay. Luck. Because this is not a story of luck, is it? This is
No, but I mean
It's all
our
manipulated.
future, of our destiny, or whatever.
It's all manipulated. If you look at the text itself, it is all manipulated. Whether or not they understand they're being manipulated is another question, right? It goes back to what Jeff was saying. You're gonna, like in the story, God wants to get from A to B. This is what we understand, that we're getting from A to B. We need the people to go through this experience, so then they will understand that they really need me to be free and whatnot. And then we're just kind of in the nitty gritty seeing what happens, and it's irrelevant because we're going to get to A to B anyway. So they're being manipulated to make the choices that they're making. They think they have free will, but in fact, they're really just part of a larger story. Right?
Omniscience.
Manipulation. However, I think, okay, now check this out, because this, in my research for this week, I love this line. Get ready for this. Get ready for this line. It comes from Ketubot in Talmud. Where's my line? Where's my line? Everything, not the manipulate, not the I got to get from A to B and you can decide everything in between. Everything. This is it to both. This is beautiful. 30a, if you're interested. To both 30a. Everything is caused by heaven. Everything is caused by heaven, except for catching a cold. Everything is caused by heaven, except for catching a cold. Okay, that may sound flip, right? It may sound flip, but let's see really what are they trying to say there? What are they trying to say there?
That this pandemic is not God's will.
Okay, so we're going. Okay, we're
not God's will.
So who said, Susan? Who said that?
I said it's not God's will. They said except catching a cold.
Except catching a cold, and you know one can extrapolate catching a cold.
Yeah, to the virus.
All the way out to like, well, what does that mean, catching a cold? I'm like, well, am I gonna wear a mask? Am I not gonna wear a mask? Somebody else, I'm going out there to catch a cold. I didn't mean to catch a cold, but maybe I'm putting myself in harm's way to catch a cold, right? I made the choice to go outside in the cold, in the dark, and all that kind of thing. Okay. Now here's where I go, Talia, go.
Oh, it was just coming from a doing the right thing. And if it's, how do we know what's God's will? And it's like the thing that the motive is pure and it's coming from being of service and not from manipulation. So, it's like the catching a cold, if it's taken to that extent of a global pandemic and a virus out of control, and it's like, if we go back to kashrut, and what is that? It's to be humane to the animals, right? Of how is something kashrut? Is it blessed? Is it done in a humane way? So, it's kind of like if we have the means to, you guys are going to hate me for this, but if we have found a way to get protein and B12 supplements, why do we need to,
kill the animals?
Slaughter animals? So it's kind of like, is that, I don't know. I mean, that's just, if this really did come from the mixing of different blood in a live wet market in in China, then maybe that's a sign that it's time to find more humane ways to feed ourselves.
When the beef industry says eat more chicken, is that what you're saying?
You can extrapolate out. So, well, here's the thing. Go, Merle, we haven't heard from you.
So whatever in the world, in life, is foreseen or preordained, and then and it's coming from heaven or whatever, if you get the cold or whatever you get, how you handle it, whatever happens to you or whatever it is that's preordained or foreseen in your life, it's your free will that controls how you handle it.
But what does that mean? Maybe it's not. Maybe you think it is, but maybe it's not. Maybe you're the way you're handling it is also preordained, or is foreseen. Okay, but okay, go Panina, and then I got to share an idea.
It always bothered me. Why didn't he let his father know where he was all through his life, till finally that was a famine and the brothers came down there and he finally felt bad because of Benjamin there and he told them who he was. He never found out. He never told his father where he was, neither his brothers. So that was his choice to stay there. And he was
I don't know. Again,
why didn't he tell his father where he was all these years?
But maybe it wasn't his choice. How do you know that it was really?
He stayed there and he didn't tell them who he was.
Yeah, but we the point is you still don't know. I mean, even if it says it's like, well, it's my free will to be able to do. Well, how do you know it's actually your free will? Maybe that's one of the manipulation of God. But okay, but just check this out. Check it out. I think. All right, I've been watching a lot of Marvel movies with my son. Okay.
Ditto. I love those.
So we went through, like, over the summer, we watched all the movies, right, in chronological order, not of release date, in chronological order. Okay. And it comes with, I don't want to give anything away, but quantum mechanics. Okay. Quantum computing, quantum mechanics. I think the Mishnah statement is the world's first example of quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Okay, what do I mean by that? That multiple things can happen at the same time, that an atom can be in two places at once, right? That is a very, very simple explanation to what quantum mechanics, quantum computing is. But the computing that we use now, right, is zeros and ones. That it's either X or Y, X or Y, X or Y. But the quantum theory talks about how an atom can exist in two places at once, which completely it evolves one's understanding of space and time. Okay. That is exactly, I think, what that statement is saying, because God exists outside of our understanding of space and time. And it goes back. So in Marvel, we're talking about this idea of multiverse, that there are multiple existences all at once. So when we say that all is foreseen, yet free will is given, a way that we do not limit God, right? Because we say if God is limiting this, the way that we do not limit God in that statement is that every single possible choice and interconnectedness of every single human's choice, right? Any possible outcome is already foreseen by God. And by us making a certain choice, there is a very real other us making a different choice. Sort of like a spider web. Like I'm here and I could choose to go here, or I could choose to go here, or I could choose to go here. But I'm choosing to go here. Yet there exists, and this is Einstein, this is quantum physics, this is, that there is also an equal David Eshel making the choice to go here, and an equal David Eshel making the choice to go here. So it kind of looks like a spider web. But for God, it's even more than just a spider web. It looks even more than just a spider web. It's as if one takes a pen, if you've ever done this before, right? And boom, put it on the paper, and then the ink just kind of like, right? It's like a big ink blot. And that big ink blot is every single possible choice that somebody can make and its relationship to another choice that somebody else made. And God knows all of those things. So God knows all of those things. So we are, in a sense, making the choice. but there are a bazillion other
infinite
that we
choices.
could have made and do make in another reality that God also knows, because God exists outside of space and time. I know, right? I told you who's going to bake your noodle. I told you who's going to bake your noodle. And that's exactly what's going on here.
Rabbi.
Miriam, we haven't heard from you, and then Jeff. Miriam.
Okay.
You're muted still.
You're muted, Miriam.
Still muted, Miriam. You're still muted, Miriam.
Well, Miriam is muted. Can I just point out how cool it is if in another space and time there's a Torah with the written down stories where they made different choices? Like a parallel universe Torah?
Yes, it's not even parallel. It's like, it's multiverse. It's not even parallel.
Simultaneous.
Simultaneous. That's the word. And that's the bananas part of it. And that
Rabbi, for you,
yeah.
If you go to Chabad.org, there is a video cartoon.
Okay.
That describes what we're just talking about, except it magnifies it to the point of the unbelievable. We talk about 2 or 3 variables. Now, if everything is created by God's words, and the words are made up of 24 characters, those 24 characters are the ultimate in quantum creation. You're thinking of 2 or 3 channels of quantum mechanics. Consider it magnified to 24 letters, which would make up a quantum computer of God to create everything and every time and every circumstance. But it is so interesting and it's so short, you have to watch it.
Okay.
Because it's elegant in understanding, and if you extend the principles to free will, free choice, time, the infinite length of God's knowledge compared to ours, it's an amazing little video.
Jeff, what is it called?
It's on Chabad.org.
Right.
And in the section that's on the right side near the top, they have a bunch of videos that you can watch.
Mm-hmm.
And this one talks about God's words creating the universe and everything else. It's just cute, short, elegant, and offers a lot of thought.
And here's the thing with this. I actually find this theory really empowering. Because it still allows me to make choices, right? It still allows me to, because I am limited. I have a beginning and I have an end, and I am limited by my own humanity, right? And if it's not that there's only one, beginning and an end, if there's only one beginning and an end, and if you think about it in those terms, then your free will maybe isn't really that free will, that God does preordain or does foresee, if it's just A, B, right? But if there is a infinite number of possibilities, infinite number of combinations that are outside the realm of something that I can understand, that is actually quite empowering for me to say, well, I am the captain of this reality. I am the captain of my reality. But again, that's not to say that because we don't live on a desert island, we are also impacted by the choices of everyone else around us, right? So even free will is really limited in that sense, right?
Look at free will this way, Rabbi. I just thought of this, and maybe off base, I don't know.
Let's see.
But let's take free will
and then
as our choice.
You don't have to raise your hand.
And free choice is fine as long as God is the overseeing monitor. In other words, if his role is omniscient and omnipotent and controls all ultimate outcomes, he is going to guide you through his justice, through his kindness, to the solution that works best for you, as well as for his plan. So
Yeah.
that it's kind of free will with a monitor.
I guess, but I think that's so
Yeah,
easy
but
for
that
us to
doesn't
say.
always happen.
Yeah,
Can
and
I
it's so easy for us to say here, living in Los Angeles, and and like, if I'm living in Bangalore, that's that's I don't want to. If that's the God, that's like, well, that sucks. Don't
I was
make
gonna
me a
say,
pawn.
what do you
Can I
blame
talk?
that choices
Yeah,
on?
Miriam is up. Miriam is up. Time out, Merle. You're up next. We're gonna go Miriam and then Merle.
Rabbi,
Yes, Miriam.
yes. I have two thoughts that I kind of want to have explained if possible.
Go.
One is we're talking about free will, and yet in the Pharaoh story of the plagues, it says at the end of each plague, "Vechabed Hashem et lev Paro," and God hardened the
Yes.
heart of Pharaoh,
Yes.
which means that before God hardened his heart, Pharaoh must have had a very positive feeling of he was ready to let them go. But then this is a huge example of manipulation.
Yes.
Complete obvious. And we don't have to conjecture on it. We don't have to have what are our inner thoughts about it. It's all written for us in the Tanakh. God.
Oh, I have something to
Then
say.
my
to
other
that.
Hold on, not your turn.
I have another thought.
And then Merle.
An interesting example that you gave us of Slamazel guy with bad luck, and he had no luck. And the point was pointed out that I don't know by whom, I forgot, maybe Talia, who said, but he had a community
Jody said
interested in him. Jody, that was very profound. She
Yeah,
said
Vaughn.
she already heard it from you.
I stole it from David.
But this is my thought too.
Yeah.
Who cares? That people do not always see themselves as others see them. He did not think he had all that terrible, bad luck. People told him, "Oh, what terrible luck you have." And he did not see it. And then when his son broke his luck, I said, "Oh, what good luck you have." And so it reminds me when we carpooled and my kids were in elementary school, in the yeshiva at Hillel. And my son said to me once, and I remember it so well, he was very young, and he said, "Mom, why do you let people take advantage of you?" I said, "Who's taking advantage of me? No one's taking advantage of me. What are you talking about?" And he said, "You're always carpooling. You have these other women, but every time I turn around, you're the one who's doing the carpooling." I said, "Well, they couldn't that day, and this one couldn't that day, and that one couldn't that day. So I did it because I could." And he said, "No, they really took advantage of you." And I said, "No, they never took advantage of me." So that, in other words, this is how we view people very often and how they view themselves.
So
I wanted to point that out.
Right? It's beautiful. Perspective. I mean, that's very Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's beautiful. Okay, hold on, Pnina. We got Merle, Susan, then Pnina. Go, Merle.
Okay, so I'm thinking that if this is like that splatter paint. You put down the splatter paint, and we're all over our heads are all over the place with different things being told to us that are controlled, preordained, whatever language you want to use. But what happens when we get in trouble? We have all those other places that are now deciding who's in control. Is God in control of all these people that are going to be our mandate for whatever we do to get in trouble? And what happens when you have a jury and you have 12 people on the jury, and you have a hung jury if they all have a different philosophy. But what happens, that's all preordained as well, so that you might get off, you might not get off, depending on what person is being told in their head what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's I don't feel like there's an answer to this. We're just sort of all over the place.
Great. Yeah. But that's very, very important. It's very important to understand. We'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end. Go, Susan.
Okay, I had some
Then
comments.
Tina, then Talia, then Jeff.
So these are just short comments. Pharaoh in the Etz Chaim, the rabbis talk about Pharaoh's heart being hardened in the first place. So he wasn't a benevolent guy. Now we're not talking the Joseph Pharaoh, we're talking later generations when a new Pharaoh came up. And they said, I think it could have been Rambam, but one of the rabbis were saying, he started with a hard heart. And often when you proceed in one direction, you can become dependent on that direction. So it constantly was hardened more and more and more.
My God.
What?
It was hardened by
Yes,
God.
yes, by God. But he started out, the rabbis say he started out not as a good person.
Right, but though
Not willing
God didn't
to-
give him the opportunity to evolve.
Yeah, but he went down the same path, and then at that point, God hardened his heart and said, okay,
Yeah.
you like this, it's going to get worse. This is how it happens. It gets worse. The other thing is for Talia's, eating meat was a concession, I believe, in the by God in the Bible, and some rabbis talk about it not only in terms of the animal, being kind to the animal, but it's also developing compassion in us, in humans, and then also sanctifying based instincts by ritual, and knowing that eating meat is this privilege, and we will not like the Noahide laws eat live meat, which is another story. But the other thing with Joseph, he didn't complain like Mazel. That's why I thought it was such a good parallel. He didn't complain. He was always like, maybe it's like Voltaire, but said, not Voltaire, Don Quixote, that everything is for the best. And he was saying, he didn't complain. He was saying this is God's plan. So I think there's a certain comfort.
He did both at the same time, Susan. He complained. He was always like, why me? But God's plan. Why me? God's plan. It was both. Keep going.
Okay, but then he saw that it was God's,
Yes.
why me? It was God's plan. This is what happens. So, I mean, because it's God's plan. Those are my 3 points.
Thank you. Perfect. Pnina, Talia, Jeff. Pnina.
Okay. The story of Joseph brings me now to think about the story of Esther, the Megillah of Esther. Also, Mordechai knew how to interpret dreams. His sister or his niece or whatever was later on becoming a queen. But the name of God is not mentioned in the Megillah, not even once. And there is a reason to it. They were assimilating badly. Mordechai took a name of a Persian god, Marduk. Esther was the name of Ishtar. They were assimilating, and they felt very comfortable there. And it might have been even written after they were willing to, they were allowed to come back and build a second temple. There is no mention of that altogether. The name of God is not mentioned in the book. There was a purpose also why the book was included in the Bible, because it was a warning. This is what could happen to the Jewish people living among non-Jews. By choice, it could turn on you in any day, whether it's the will of God or not. It's not the point at the moment. It's just happening. And what happened with Joseph was the same thing. He was a king there in Egypt, in charge of everything, never made an attempt to go back to his family, to acknowledge his roots. And he felt very comfortable there. And then he died of old age. So he was lucky. Nothing happened while he was alive. Fine. But then things changed for the Jewish people. And the book of Esther was a warning. That's what happened when you live in a diaspora. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been included. Okay? and the name of God is not mentioned there for a reason. They did not know and didn't want to know God in the story. So you do the equations. This is my feeling. And yes, thank God that God stood up for us. I'm a believer that yes, there is a God or a higher power. And yes, I have to give my life to, and my thought that he's there watching over me and guiding me the right way. But we need to look also at reality and be more practical in translating the Tanakh. The story of Joseph, it tells you what a father shouldn't do. He shouldn't make a child his preference or love one child over the other. It causes trouble among the brothers. There is a lesson in the story. Now also, when you are in diaspora, don't forget your people. Don't forget who you are. Joseph did. There is a lot of stuff that you need to look at it for more from practical reasons. I keep saying, Dibra Torah bilshon bnei Adam. The Torah spoke in the language of people. You have to look at the stories practically. Yes, there is a God. We never forget that it's there. Otherwise, the Torah wouldn't have been written. But also we have to look at choices that we make and the results of the choices that we make. What could happen? Things that did happen. We have to learn from them. That's my story.
Beautiful. All right, Tama, because we're running short on time. I want to make sure everybody gets their point. Talia, go, and then Jeff.
Okay, so the whole thing with Joseph and his brothers, there was a lot of fear, there was manipulation, and he even did it when he stashed the goblet or whatever in one of their bags, right? To like
testing them.
Pardon?
Testing them. Keep going.
Testing them, right? And but this whole idea of trusting in something that, okay. I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought because now I'm back with the how do we act in God's will, and how, are things predestined or these foreseeing the future, but still it's like people want to judge, but they're doing the same thing themselves often in their lives. I mean, the only thing is that when I think about like the Holocaust, or I think about child abuse and things like that, it's just like, I can't wrap my head around it. But what I can wrap my head around is that I buy clothes that are made in sweatshops, and a lot of us do, and we're doing it. Like, as soon as I think that I'm better than, or I'm doing it too. And it's like, I guess the whole thing is like, if we're consumers, how do we spend our dollar? And then really sitting with facts, because like we trust that a steel girder is a steel girder and holding up a building, but really it's all these like tiny, what are they, electrons floating around each other with space in between. And that's God. I mean, that's like God's work, right? I breathe I wake up, I take breaths. That's God's work. But like the only thing that I do, like where am I making choices in my life, and how is that affecting others?
I mean, that's also, you could even look about the way we're living at COVID right now. And a friend of mine who's our associate executive director of the temple and direct colleague of mine and Jody's, Doug, we were talking about COVID, and he was like, everybody thinks that what they're doing, they're doing it right. I'm doing it safe, but everybody else, they're mashuga. Everybody's doing it wrong. Everybody else is doing it wrong, right? So it's like, we think what we're doing is right, but what other people are doing is wrong. It's this perspective. Like, yeah, we think about the sweatshops and the Holocaust and abuse and everything like that. Yet we still buy from these things. Fascinating. And it all, we can dive down deep in the story. That's why I'm saying to take a look at it at this macro level, because right now, what are we looking at? We're looking at the details of this story, and it's beautiful and really intricate and full of color and nuance and all that kind of stuff. But if you take a look back and look at the text, it's the detailed manipulation by God to get us to this other point, right? It's the detailed manipulation of getting us to become slaves and then leaving to be slaves, to be God's people, to receive the Torah, to go back to the promised land. It's just the details macro manipulation, right? Ay, 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 I can't even believe what time it is. I can't
Two
even
quickies, Rabbi.
Take it
It
easy.
goes so fast,
I know,
David.
it goes so fast. Go,
Two quickies for you.
please.
Number one, Joseph was the greatest example ever of Jewish assimilation into his culture. He was indeed an Egyptian, number one. Number two, he is responsible for the entire concept of slavery. First, he created an indentured society that gave everything to get their grain from him, the land and the money, and work in servitude to the Pharaoh on all of his land, and really sets up the principle of slavery for the entire Israeli population that comes later and continues from this Pharaoh to the final Pharaoh that we see. He's not altogether a good guy. So you
Or
gotta,
keep going.
yeah,
Or
you got to look at him, as Panina would say, as a human, filled with positives and negatives. And he was not particularly ethical in the Jewish sense when he became vizier of Egypt.
or
And
he was
assumed
solely a manipulated tool cog in the big wheel of God's idea to get the people here to there, to there, to there, to there. I don't know.
no one knows.
Exactly.
There's no
And
way
that
of knowing.
goes back to Merle's point, but that's what's so beautiful about our tradition is that we are nearly commanded to wrestle with these ideas and look
Take the good, take the things that reference how to live together in the safest way, the sociologic treatise of the Talmud and the Torah and the lessons of living. And we have the ultimate forgiveness of Joseph and his brothers. I mean, they're great examples, but it's not all white. It's
No,
black
but
and
Joseph,
white.
but Jeff, Joseph brought up his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, whom we bless on Friday nights. Men bless their boy children, put their hands over their heads, Ephraim and Manasseh, to be like Ephraim and Manasseh, who were the sons of Joseph. And he taught them to be Jewish and Hebrew, etc. So we understand. So that takes away from his being such a bad guy.
Well, you know, covert Judaism is it really Judaism?
Well,
Is
It
it
has to be.
okay.
Is
In
it
many
the
cases-
Inquisition all over
But in
again?
many cases, it has to be.
Look
Otherwise,
at
it
what I
can't
can do.
exist
Watch
at
what I'm
all.
doing.
It has to be.
Boom! I muted both of you. Ha ha! I am in my free will on you. Look at that. Oh, you guys are amazing. Now I'm asking you to unmute again. Miriam, unmute yourself. Jeff already unmuted himself. Unmute yourself, Miriam.
There
Okay.
you go.
Beautiful. Okay.
I wanted to say something about Penina too.
All
How
right. You
she
know what?
feels
I'll
they were
give you
so
that
assimilated. Esther and Mordecai were not that assimilated because Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman because Mordecai was Jewish, a religion of another people, strange people, as Haman said. And then it was Esther or Mordecai who said towards the end of the Megillah, well, we know that help will come from elsewhere.
Well, okay.
And
Fabulous way to end. I love this. I love this. I love this. And I love all of you. This is fantastic.
This was
continued.
great. Thank you.
And remember, I don't know. We don't know. We just don't know. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't stop asking those questions. See that? Marvel movies, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and the Mishnah, all the same thing. All right, everybody.
Thank
Wonderful to
you.
see you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Miriam.
Everyone.
Enjoyed it always.
shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom,
Thank you.
May
Miriam.
we be
Bye-bye.
together. May we
Be
be
safe,
together
everybody. Be
again
safe. Bye-bye
next
and healthy.
Hanukkah.
Bye-bye.
May
Okay.
we spend next Hanukkah together again with each other.
Miriam, thank you. I really liked your defense of Joseph and your other defense. I
Like the
agree
good.
with you.
good in both. And I don't think he was
Yes.
bad because Jeff used those words in the beginning. He said
Right.
Joseph was a bad guy.
But
And
he
he
was-
wasn't totally a bad guy.
And
He
not
was-
even total.
He was human. Put it that
But you
way.
didn't say that, Jeff. You said
I
he was
did
a
say
bad
that
guy.
at the end. That's when we were
Oh.
talking at each other instead of with each other.
Because most people that are bad have a good side to them, with a lot of exceptions in our political system.
Are you
But a lot
doubting
of
my
people-
good side, Miriam? Are you doubting my good side?
No, of course
Yeah.
not.
And you were right too about Mordecai and Esther. And thank you for
Sure.
sticking up
Sure.
for them, and for Joseph, who I think was a good guy. So
What's the element of that story that wasn't mentioned? That story and the punishment potential of Haman against the Jews comes from one point and one point only. That all the Jews had given up the ways of Judaism and had assimilated. And the only reason they were ultimately saved is because they all repented as a mass population at the end, and then they were saved.
Well, that's not written in the book of Esther. That's your interpretation.
No, it's written there.
Here's
You'll have to
something
show
really interesting, though. Like, we have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has moved mountains, right? But then people think that she's a baby killer because she wanted equal rights for women and men when it came to the law. But people saw it as only that she wants to make abortion legal. And so they look at her as being a baby killer. Educated women that I've talked to, I'm like, and you're a woman and you're saying that? So like, this is the same thing. It's like to label someone, like that person, a decision they made to move society forward or in what looked like the best interest of the time, then can be interpreted by some as being horrifically bad. Like Joseph, maybe that was the best scenario at the time for the situation, because he couldn't say, no, let everyone have a piece of land, or nobody owns the land, right? I mean, so instead of marking him as he did, like he started off slavery in the worst way possible. I mean, some people look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg and think she's like trying to like promote baby murder.
So what, but Talia, what has that got to do with, they are the ones that have to look within themselves for daring to call her a baby killer because
Right.
she feels that a 14-year-old who was raped did not have to have that baby, because she feels that a woman is the only one with her family to decide what she wants to do with her own body. She's going to let men in Congress tell a woman what she may or may not do with her body. And these men have influenced young people. So when then you see right to life, people who think they are right to life, they're not. They're simply against abortion, nothing to do with life, because once the baby is born, who is taking care of that baby? Another another unwanted child in this world. So the person who says that about Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not worthy of my answer to them. There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to convince them when they think she's a murderer. How dare they?
Miriam,
Only about themselves, and I will not stand there and answer them.
I
And
deleted
good for
them.
you.
I
Good
blocked
for
them.
you, Talia. No, good
And
for you.
also, I have to say that on Friday nights when I bless my daughter and I say, Visara,
Yeah.
Leah, I add Ruth.
You what?
I added Ruth. We add Ruth in this house.
Oh, how lovely. Okay. Ruth
it's
Bader.
interesting concept, Miriam,
Good for
in
you.
Judaism
Yes.
that says that the fetus is not considered alive or has rights of a human until after the 30th
That's
day.
absolutely what all the doctors say, and you're a surgeon, and you say it, and that's exactly how Judaism looks at it. It is not a full viable baby until it is born.
Until it's born and lives 30 days. You can
Oh.
still have that I don't want to say consequences of death for that 0 to 30-day infant and not have committed a death of a living person. There is no viability or life for the first 30 days that is considered in Judaism.
I thought when we studied this with Rabbi Leader that it was until the baby is born.
No, it's beyond that.
That's good to know, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you for that information.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I have never delivered a baby of my own in the sense of
because you've never been pregnant?
That's it. I'm only pregnant with thoughts. That's all.
But here's a question, Jeff, in regards to your view of Joseph with slavery.
Yes.
You know, it's like you have Albert Einstein who, you know, atomic energy, and then yet it's devastation, but it also was a great, you know, it was for the time, under the circumstances, how it was discovered. And you know what I mean? It's like, you cannot demonize him. I just still wonder about Joseph and how would it have been something where it was just trying to reason through a situation in the context of, because how many people today have, I mean, there are people that have housekeepers and they treat them not well. I mean, like, you know, they have them living with them in their attic. They pay them $10 an hour, $13 an hour is like the average price. The average wages I've heard in like Beverly Hills, it's $14. Nobody pays more than $14. I think is that even minimum wage? And it's just like the idea of in Spanglish, that movie, when the housekeeper runs into the sliding door thinking it's open and almost breaks her nose. And the owner of the house is saying, oh, don't worry about it. You didn't break the door. Where as opposed to saying, oh my God, my dear, are you okay? Like that mentality exists in so many. And so many people walk around with that. Does that mean they're a bad person or they're just in the condition of thinking a certain way? So, I mean, I kind of feel like with Joseph, some things are like, I don't know, part of...
I agree with Talia so much, Jeff, because when you said that Joseph was responsible for the slavery, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I surely did not agree with you. Nor do I think, unless I'm wrong, we have anything written down in the Tanakh that says that or even makes one think that. So it's your thought and okay, but I surely don't agree. I wish that people could talk to each other like this politically instead of despising each other for who they voted for.
That's another topic altogether. But the sharing of ideas, though he didn't call it slavery, the discussion talks about indentured servitude. And really, that's just a euphemism for slavery.
I don't know where it does, but I don't mind if you find it and you can point it out to me at another time. Okay. I would enjoy reading it if you can find it. Well, okay, everybody.
Miriam,
I think Don is waiting.
Oh, yes. Okay, we'll talk later.
Go home or something. Don, thank you for this if you're responsible. Thank you, Don Levy.
This is just the opinion of a lowly Jew who lives in the desert.
All Jews once lived for 40 years.
Well, I'm still in the desert of Las Vegas.
They refuse to ask for directions. They refuse to ask for directions.
I know. That's a man thing, not a woman thing.
Yeah, I think that's changing a little. Anyhow, happy end.
Love you both. Love to share. Thank you.
Jeff, did you get a kick out of the backgammon story?
I did, and consider yourself blessed to have the ability to do that. Believe me, I wish I could. With my
Miriam, we're just talking about my mom. I got her a really beautiful leather backgammon set because we play so much backgammon, like hours and hours of backgammon, and she won't learn mahjong, and I have to accept that, you know. And
you know what I told your mother, Talia?
What?
I told your mother to kick your butt at backgammon.
I think they call it
and enjoy it.
Ask your mom if this is what they call shesh.
No, we call it sheshbesh. We call it.
Yeah. Okay, now I know.
But I bought her beautiful Italian leather.
Lovely.
Yeah, gorgeous set. And because the old one was like wood and really loud, and it was like migraine inducing. And she's like, but it's so heavy. I'm allergic to heavy. And I'm like, oh my God.
She's got to pull your chain a little bit, Talia. Seriously, it can't all be good. You know that.
Yeah, it can't be perfect. Okay.
All right,
everyone,
love you both.
That's a good way. Yeah,
Have
but
a
we can
wonderful
try.
Shabbat.
Yes, we can keep trying and trying to be better and better. And I know it sounds very preachy, but Saturday, tomorrow is my birthday. And so I'm very, very convinced.
Saturday is your birthday? This Saturday?
Yeah, tomorrow. It's okay.
Oh my
But you know
goodness.
what?
Happy birthday, Miriam. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
why didn't you
Thank
tell
you.
the whole group? We would have
No,
shared
no.
that. We
No,
would have
'cause we
sung
were talking-
birthday
I
greetings.
didn't tell them because we were talking about important things.
Oh, you
You're
are
important,
important.
Miriam. You're like, oh my gosh, it's to
Listen, I have the biggest birthday in the world, the biggest blessing that anybody could have at my age. I sprint out of bed and I run and I'm vertical and I'm caneless and painless. What more could I
Beautiful.
ask God?
120
To
and
be
then
shameless at your age would be
I'm very
even better.
shameless. That, oh, for sure, I'm shameless. But so I thank God every morning, and she always says, "Sweetheart, you're welcome. You're
There you
welcome, sweetheart." She says it every morning. Okay, everybody. Bye bye.
All right. Happy birthday, Miriam.
Happy
Thank you, my
birthday.
dear. Thank you. I wasn't going to tell anybody.
Bye-bye, Talia.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.